Hello and welcome to Too Fast, Too Forever. There's all kinds of family. We chose this one. This is episode 303, The Arrival of a Train at La Ciotat from 1897. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
I'm Joe too, and this episode is brought to you by TrainX. At TrainX, they believe that everyone deserves an opportunity to be happy and healthy. Shout out to trainxwellness.com.
Well, shout out to Train X and welcome to Too Fast, Too Forever in our planes, trains, but no automobiles lap. We are going so old school here. This is a little bit of a try to top that monster pod. Try to go back into the 1800s. This might be the earliest iteration of a vehicle on screen. I don't know. All I know is that our guest might have the answer to that question. Our guest is also probably the person who showed this to me for the first time, I would imagine, maybe, back in 2007-ish. So, I mean, still 110 years after this came out, but, you know, we'll get there. But with us tonight, the co-host of The Contenders show right here on the Cage Club podcast network, making his triumphant return after not really enjoying the Fast and the Furious so long ago. We have Tobin Addington. Hello, Tobin.
Hello. Happy to be here.
I wanted to get
Glad
you back
to have you
on,
back.
and I was like, what could we do? And then I had this idea as like, not like a joke, not like a meme,
We need
but
a
like just like
film.
as a thing. And I was like, oh, I know exactly what he would want to. And you responded so quickly and so enthusiastically. So I'm so glad to have you on here to talk about the movie in which a train arrives at La Ciotat station, which is 46
Where's that at?
seconds long. It's in France.
Okay, that makes sense.
I wanted to do like our whole like real ramp up on like box office and Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic. This is on none of those sites. It was directed by, is it Louis and Auguste Lumiere?
That's right.
Joe, you might know them from their work, Workers Leaving the Lumiere Factory.
Yeah.
Have you seen that one?
Yeah, that's my favorite of theirs. I like their earlier stuff.
No writers credited. Produced by the same Louis and Auguste Lumiere, which, Joe, you also probably know from The Sprinkler Sprinkled. One of your favorites?
I hope that's just... Never mind.
I'm
going to stop there.
I think that's like, from what I gathered, and I did not watch it, even though I'm sure it's 30 seconds long. I think that's them like pulling a jackass on like a gardener, maybe something like that. I think they like sprinkle a gardener with water, like the gardener gets wet.
They Fight Club them to start a fight?
Yeah. Yes. Very much so. Fight Club stole from the Lumiere Brothers for sure.
Makes sense.
It's shot by Louis Lumiere, which, Joe, you might know from Arrivée d'un train à Perrache. You know, that one as well.
No.
I have no idea what this cost to film, but I do know that if you want to catch a train from Paris to La Ciotat, you can get it from $30.75 online. So
Right now? Okay, that's
right
a pretty
now,
good price.
$30
Yeah.
to get a train from Paris to La Ciotat. I've got some background on this, but Tobin, as my professor from World Cinema Movements way back in the Ramapo days, can you talk a little bit about like the historical context of this? Why it matters, why it's important, and if Dom Toretto and family could have hijacked this train?
Well, first of all, of course they could have hijacked this train. Is there anything they can't hijack? Would be a better question, I think. So the short version of this is that the Lumiere Brothers are credited with the first publicly screened motion picture in 1895 in Paris. It technically wasn't the first. Truly, it's hard to pin down, but they're credited as having the first publicly screened. It was not this movie, even though it's often cited as the train arriving at the station. It was, in fact, the Workers Leaving the Factory was the first movie.
Which, Joe, if you don't know, is just workers leaving. Not just, but
I
it's
could
workers
guess.
leaving the factory.
I could guess. Did they like charge to see this, or was it just like
Yes, probably like a
charged
film festival,
money?
man. This is
So the really interesting thing is that
okay.
Is that prior to the Lumiere Brothers screening their film, the year before, Thomas Edison's workshop, a guy named W.K.L. Dixon in Thomas Edison's workshop in New Jersey, had invented the first movie camera. And then what they would do is you would then go and you would look at it like it'd be in this like big box, and you'd look down into the box, and you'd pay money per screen per person, and you just go like crank the thing or push the button, and you'd watch the movie.
Now, was that like a Nickelodeon? Was that what the Nickelodeon was?
Became Nickelodeon's. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Okay.
So the cool thing is that when the Lumiere Brothers started doing this, Edison, who loved his money, was like, wait, you mean I can show this movie one time and fill the auditorium with 30 people or 50 people or 80 people, charge them all, and then do that again instead of one by one, charging person by person by person. Yes. So that the real innovation all here in this really is like the foundations of Hollywood, of like the system of making money by screening movies.
I like that Edison is like the world's greatest inventor and couldn't figure out that.
He wasn't good at marketing. Apparently very good at inventing, not good at marketing.
So now, Joe, did you know the Lumiere Brothers by name? Had you heard of this movie? Do you know anything? Because there's like one sort of famous thing about this movie that we've not mentioned yet that is apparently untrue, but there's like one bit of lore. Did you know anything about any of this before I was like, we're watching this 46-second long thing, which is on YouTube, by the way, if you want to watch it on YouTube?
I feel like I've seen it, and I don't know if it's like I've seen it in a Bugs Bunny cartoon recreated or like used by something else that was in something. Or like, you know what I mean? Like when you see like an old-timey movie, then they play this on the screen at the movies. But it felt familiar, but I don't know that I've sought out seeing this.
So the famous bit of film lore, film history here is that when people saw this movie, they were so terrified that the train was going to hit them that they ran out of the theater screaming. And so for a long time, this was sort of not like a joke, but it was just like, can you believe that like this movie is so realistic that people are running out of the theater screaming? And apparently that has been debunked over the years, that way later in like 1934, the Lumieres would reshoot this with a stereoscopic film camera and try to add like a 3D effect. And that might have been when people got freaked out by it. Because there is also like a colorized version with sound on YouTube. Like there's all the different, like people have like really sort of chopped this up in a lot of different ways. But like the thing that people kind of know about this is that like it scared people into running out of the theater, which I didn't know until this week, is apparently not true.
It is not true. It is not true.
Which is a bummer because it's a good story.
We did talk about in World Cinema Movements, but maybe you were taking notes on other things.
Oh, I'm sure I was taking too many notes.
Because it's one of the cool things is that, like, movies start with hype. Like the initial reports out of the theater when this first screen was, oh my God, people can't handle this. They're running from the theater. Sort of subsequent investigations, reading people's diaries, like figuring out what might have actually happened. The sense is probably that people just screamed in delight as this train came racing toward them, because so many of the there weren't that many, but the movies that had been screened before were you like the sprinkler sprinkled, the one you talk about, where it's just like you're just seeing the gardener and you're seeing the boy step on the hose and then get sprayed, and then workers living in the factory, you're just watching these workers leave the factory. There's no sort of depth to it, right? So the idea that this train has come racing at you, the current thinking is that the audience was just so pleased with it, they like screamed and cheered in delight at what they were seeing, not unlike I'm sure you all do at Fast and Furious movies.
Of course. Now, Joe,
exactly.
when you watched this week, did you have any thoughts that went through your head? You're just like,
yes,
that's a train.
No, I had many thoughts.
Okay, go for it.
I think that this might be a moon landing situation.
You think this was faked?
I think this was faked. Because how is it like the first time they're shooting a movie and nobody looks at the camera like, what the fuck are those guys doing?
Oh, Tobin's got an answer.
Oh, Tobin, please.
I have an answer to this one. So they actually shot this movie 3 times over the course of about 8 months.
8 months?
At different time, like 8 months, and then another couple months they'd shoot it again. They were just shooting things all the time, like
because Justin Lin was scheduled and then he dropped out. Louis Leterrier came in and he dropped out.
He had to rewrite the whole script on the plane,
on the fly. Yep. And they had issues with some of the earlier versions with people looking at the camera. And so this the version that's most famous, the one the 4K restoration on YouTube, the one that you find most often, is full of people who are because the Ciotat, where the train's coming to the station, is where the Lumiere brothers had like a family estate. And so it's full of their family, like cousins, children, whatever. So they're all ringers in this last one. They're all
they were planted. I was right.
They're plants. So you are absolutely right. It's not that they're like, I don't know what this thing is, like this box you're like looking through to shoot at me. It's that they've been sort of prepped. Don't look at the camera when you get off the train. So let's run the train back and take it again. So people talk about it as a documentary. It's not really. It's really an acted scene. So you are right. It is not sort of capturing direct real life.
Wow.
That makes a lot of sense. I was also noticing that the train seems very inaccessible to pretty much everyone. There's like giant steps up. I don't know how like women in dresses get onto it, or like just anybody in general that's not just like a fully formed adult man.
Yeah, there's like a big platform. I have it looping right now while we're recording. There's a big flat platform, and then there's like probably 18 inches above that is like a kind of narrow step, and then another 18 inches above that is the carriage door. So it's like, good luck.
And it's like a metal step. Like you're gonna get jacked up on this thing if you miss that step. Like your leg is just getting shredded.
And they're like little kids. Like
that's what I said.
4-year-olds. Yeah, it's. The little bit more backstory, and Tobin mentioned there's 3 different versions. This is the most common one where the women and children are boarding. There's a little bit of fuzziness in terms of the year this should be. Like Letterboxd, I think, says 1897. Maybe IMDb says 1896. But there was one in 1895 because they held a film festival or mini film festival screening in December of 1895. They showed 10 movies, but this was not one of them. Then they reshot it. They showed it in January of 1896. And then this one, I think this version that we're talking about specifically was shot in 1897. So like, there's like a whole like bunch of different things. Or maybe it was like released in 1897 or something, but like, I just think it's so funny that even back then there's director's cuts, right? Like there's just like, we're not happy. This movie doesn't work. We got to recut it. We got to redo it. We're going
to be in the studio for another 8 months.
Extended director's cut at the film festival. Come see it. You thought you saw it once. You're going to see it again.
Test screenings, the whole deal.
Yeah. I want to know,
amazing.
Was this like at the time, were they already doing like music with the movies, or was everything just silent?
It's a great question. The phrase silent movie is kind of a misnomer because there was always music, or not always. It was almost always some kind of sound accompaniment. Sometimes it'd be a narrator. Sometimes it would be, they'd send out sheet music. And of course, the larger the venue you saw the movie in, the more instruments probably played for you, right? So you see it someplace with a whole orchestra, the whole orchestra will play. That comes a little bit later. 1897 is a little early for that. But prior to there being movies, people would go sit in a theater and watch magic lantern shows where they project images up on a screen. They
like old style, like projector, what was it, like transparencies?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
When you were in school, that's cool.
Yeah, exactly, like an overhead projector. Yeah, exactly. And so the when they would do that, they would have sound because people would get bored if you didn't have sound playing too, right? So they would. This is all showbiz, you know. And so it's unlikely that these ever screened without some kind of sound playing behind them, which is part of why you'll often, when you see them when they release DVDs or whatever, they will have a piano score or something, which probably more accurately approximates what it would be like to watch the movie in the theater.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
So this movie is indexed as Lumiere number 653, but there's not 653 movies. Like, is that just like shots and photos? And like, do you know what that number actually refers to?
Yeah, it has to do with their archive and the number of things that they produced in some kind of order, although I don't know that it's chronological. So I think you're right. I think it's not all movies. It might be still images. It might be, it's part of an archiving number system as opposed to necessarily like how many movies, although they did make a bunch.
Well, I mean, if you're shooting movies 20 seconds long, then we can crank them out. Joey and I would have like 70 billion movies of Too Fast, Too Forever.
Totally.
Because they made like 60 movies and they already finished like 25 before they shot this one. So like, I don't know how you get to 653 from there, but like by all means, although there is a French filmmaker and who was the former head of the Lumiere Institute, this guy Bertrand Tavernier, who called this one, quote, the first masterpiece. So this is, Joe, this is like the first Fast and Furious. It's like the cinema was not the same before this. This is ushering in a new era.
Like pre-rock, post-rock.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. In modern cinema, that's what we would say, right?
When I was coming first to film, the story I learned was that this was the first movie screened, and that's when people screamed running from the theater. That's how important this movie is that like the story that got passed down to me like by a teacher like in college was that this was the first movie that was screened. And so there's a real dividing line of sort of before this movie and after this movie in terms of what movies could be. It wasn't just like people walking down the street. That became less interesting pretty quickly. And so you have like some dynamic thing of like this vehicle racing at you through the screen is like that, as we say, continues to be a very sort of powerful thing in movies.
And the framing, like they got the framing on this one pretty good. Like I can see why that they're like oh shit, if we just shoot it on a little bit of an angle and it's moving towards you, that's pretty cool. Like totally. Yeah, you get like a little bit more playfulness. I could imagine that this wasn't like their first movie. Like they've worked out some kinks with spraying a gardener and stuff like that. They were like, okay, let's have a little fun with this one.
It's like how they warmed up on Vine before taking it to Instagram.
Exactly.
Yes.
So Jean-Luc Godard, who made Breathless, once remarked that, quote, movies are the train, not the station, suggesting that the film becomes cinema or a moving picture, only when the viewer engages imaginatively with the characters who have been moving with the train rather than identifying with the characters waiting on the platform. So it's just like, hey, like all these people getting on, don't pay attention to them. Think about the guys who are actually on the train. Just like how in Fast 5, when they get to the train and Dom's already on there.
I was thinking about how we do the Fast and the Furious Minute and we watch everything but the most important things.
Oh,
like for me, like it's all the periphery.
Also, I do want to correct myself that Brian and Mia were on the train. Dom breaks into the train. So before you send in angry hate mail, but yes, but that is interesting to be like, yeah, it's not about, because I guess like the spectacle here is not the people getting on. It's the fact that the train is coming and stopping and like you're able to capture that, right? So like this guy getting off the train is just like, okay. Interesting. What do you think of that? That's what the guy, Bertrand Tavernier, also calls this the first horror movie. Do you think that's at all fair?
By what measurement?
I don't know.
Man. We're stretching
but
now.
There was no movies before. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I think where I got that from was Wiki, and it said, but any factual basis to this anecdote itself remains highly problematic. Just even people back then were just like, I don't know what you mean, man. Like, what are you talking about? But he was, insistent.
If they would have caught one of their legs on the metal things, it would have been the first horror movie.
Oh man.
But could it be the first action movie, I wonder? I mean, in terms of there being,
that makes more sense.
If we're going to call it the first anything, that might be more accurate. Although,
like, what genre would this be? It's not like drama. Is it drama?
It would be documentary,
but
scripted documentary.
Right, like mockumentary. I don't know.
I guess
they would call it an actualité. That was the phrase that they used at the time.
Reality TV.
You're right.
Exactly. I don't think has any genre, and Letterboxd calls it a documentary. So, yeah. Cinema Verite came around in is that the 60s? Is that France in the 60s?
Yeah, 60s, 70s, yeah.
But this is also kind of adhering to that too. Like this is all naturalistic lighting and stuff like that, right? Although I guess the whole the third time around doing it, third time's a charm. Shout out to Mike Manzi. But by not actually having real people, maybe you're kind of going against that whole idea, or maybe not.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite early Lumiere films is the two babies having or childish lunch or something like that, which is two little kid, infants in bonnets sitting at two high chairs next to each other, and one of them has the bowl and spoon, and the other one really wants it, so the other one grabs it and steals the food from the first kid, and the first kid bursts into tears and just bawls through the whole thing. And that's it.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
It's one that always gets a great reaction when I show it to students who've never seen it before, especially because at the very end, the kid with the spoon appears to start to try and eat the other kid, to dig into their hand with the spoon. It's so it's that may be the first horror movie if we're counting. But that was what the Lumiere brothers did. They even though that's clearly set up, they're sitting next to each other in a way they wouldn't probably if they were actually just out there having lunch. But you're sort of seeing life happen in front of you, even if it has been arranged. And so that's why all of these movies have that. When the workers leave the factory, they would do multiple takes. It's not like they would just do it once, and so all of these things are, as you say, reality TV is not a terrible analogy for it, right? Because they are redoing the same shit. And, like producers are telling them what to do, and you're having multiple takes, and you're playing it off as if it's real life, and to some degree it is, but in other ways it's not.
So like, what was it about these? Was it just the fact that they were new? Like, why would people watch movies now to escape or whatever, but this is to a certain extent just like literally a thing that they're getting out of work, they're getting on a train, whatever. Like, what was it about? Is it just the novelty, or is there more to like the actual story and the presentation here that people were like attracted to?
It starts as the novelty for the first 8-9 years of movies, in part because the infrastructure has to get built up. Like you have to start to have screens, and then eventually they're building theaters. And what they discovered was pretty soon is that movies that had stories, people would go back and see again and again. And once you'd seen the train arrive at the station a couple of times, I'm kind of done. And so in their attempts to sort of, make money and get more of an audience and make it, things that people would return to, we moved into sort of scripted content, like clearly, original stories pretty quickly, like by 1902, 03, 04. And you get people like Georges Méliès, with the trip to the moon is like one of the next big turning points out of France, right? And so that's what then begins to make movies a sort of a thing that's not going to go away, not a fad. But at the very beginning, it was just like, have you seen this new thing? And then it's like, have you seen the new version of this thing? And then eventually it's, let's go see the new story that they're showing at the whatever Orpheus.
Because like what is crazy is that you go from this that's like 45 seconds. Because I was making lists on Letterboxd of like my favorite movies from every year. And I got back here and I'm just like, I got nothing logged at all before 1920. Like 1920, it was like, what do I have? Like Nosferatu and like, Un Chien Andalou and stuff like that. But I'm just like, what's even before that? But like, what's crazy, you go from like a 45-second thing in 1896 to a trip to the moon in 1902 that's like 15 minutes long to just like 10 years later, like Birth of a Nation in 1915 is 3 hours and 13 minutes long.
Yep.
Technology, dude.
Because if you're looking like on Letterboxd, you can sort by like decade, and like a lot of the 1900s, like it's a lot of Lumiere, it's a lot of like the same kind of like their kind of poster or like whatever, I don't know, it was their art or whatever. And then all of a sudden, the 1910s, it's totally different era. It's amazing how quickly it all changed and developed.
And of course, they wouldn't just show you wouldn't go buy a ticket to train arriving at the station. You'd go buy a ticket to see the 10 movies or the 15 movies.
This is what I was going to ask. Okay, yeah. Right? So, there's it's like a showing, and like how long, how long did these run, do you think? I
mean, first they were about 10, 15 minutes with all the movies combined. And then it was like, now we're at a half an hour. And then we're at an hour. And then we're at an hour and a half. And then eventually it gets to the 3 hour movie. And part of what's happening too is that movies that's where when we talk about feature films, the feature film is the big one with all the little ones around it, right? Your cartoons, your newsreels, prior to that, it's you watch 3 or 4 of these little short silent things, and then a 20-minute movie, and then maybe 2 more comedy things at the end. So you'd have a feature presentation in the middle, which is that language then comes from how they would construct that hour and a half or 2 hours in the movie theater.
That makes a lot of sense. But now everything's a feature presentation.
Totally. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Plus trailers, right? Trailers are our new shorts.
That's right. Yeah. Good point.
Like, I know that it was also like in the 40s, like they used to do like a cartoon and like newsreels before a movie, right? Because like a whole whatever. Like, I know that this is like a very important movie, and I know that like people have paid attention to this and remastered or whatever, but like I was just looking on Letterboxd and I saw a movie from 1903 called The Sick Kitten. And like it's on YouTube, because all this is on YouTube. Like if it exists, it's on YouTube. And like it looks how you would expect a thing from this to look. Like it's like the flashing lights and like it's just kind of like amazing it exists at all, but it's also like this is like hard to, like this print that they've made of Arrival of a Train is like, it's beautiful. Like it's crazy how good this looks.
Great. Mm-hmm. It really does.
125 years old. Like it's amazing. Like it's staggeringly beautiful.
And probably closer to what it looked like at the time. I mean, when we look at the degraded images of a lot of these old movies, well, the film degrades like over time unless you preserve it really carefully. And they didn't know how to preserve it. I mean, it's just a brand new technology at the time. So it's kind of only the ones that were the most sort of influential at the beginning got saved enough in order to sort of have a good copy. It is that 4K of Train Arriving at the Station is pretty beautiful.
Did you watch or have you seen like the colorized version with sound that people have gone in? Like, do you like that, or is that kind of dumb? Like,
I don't. I don't. Did you like it?
It wasn't great for me either. No. I was like, give me the original, the screener version. You know what I mean? I don't want the director's cut play of this. I mean, it's cool. Like the colorization of old photos, like I get it, but like for this, I'm like, no.
I mean, it's kind of the racer trash of whatever it was made, right? It's like, hey, we're gonna like chop and screw this, and just but we're gonna make it look like you were there.
Yeah, it needs more purple.
Joe, do you have any other thoughts about Arrival of a Train?
I thought it was cool to watch. I should have probably watched more of these. Like, I should have curated one of these 15-minute viewings of like a bunch of them together, so I could have gotten the full experience. Maybe I would have gotten Rachel to like play a kazoo in the background or something like that.
Toby, do you have any recommendations for like other ones that just like to get like a sense of like the gamut of like what kind of stuff that they were doing?
Yeah, if you look up Lumiere Brothers Actualités, and so it's actualities with an E and an accent, that you could find like, here are 15, here are 20, they're the YouTube compilations. And one of the cool things about the camera that they invented is that you'd use the camera to shoot, and then you would use the camera to you'd refigure the camera, and you would use that to develop your movie, and then you would refigure it again and put a light source behind it and use it as the projector for your movie.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really, really cool. Did they eventually piece it out too? Were they the guys that broke it off and made it did they eventually segregate all of these pieces? Or did somebody else come along and do that?
Somebody else came along and did that. Their main business was sewing machine factories. That's what the factory is. And there's a mechanism that moves through a sewing machine that is very similar, or because one of the issues with film is you have to stop the film strip twice every second as it moves through the camera to hold it to get an image as it's taking all these pictures. And so that's why they were able to do that. So they invented this thing that could, and so what they would do is it was very easy to take this like little box, it's not very big, the cinematograph, and carry it around anywhere in the world and shoot something and develop it and show it like that day, like you could so
that's really cool.
They were so you can find ones where like it's going down the Amazon on the front of a boat, and here's one of the lion at the London Zoo, and here's one of whoever, the king of whatever, like you could, so it sort of doesn't, I don't think it really matters. They're all kind of the same in terms of what they are. But you can find any of them and sort of curate your own, 10 of them in a row, and then and you'll have some kind of similar experience to what they would have had at the time.
So they just packed this shit up. So they were like, okay, we invented the camera, proof of concept. They packed this shit up. They're like, we're going on a fucking adventure, and they just take off. And they're just like, we're just going to film everything.
They would sell the cameras, or they would hire people to go do that.
Oh, they're hawking the cameras while they're doing it too? Yep. Oh, this makes a lot more sense.
They weren't traveling everywhere. They stayed in France for the most part, or at least in sort of continental Europe. But also people were inventing similar cameras all over the place. And so someone would get a hold of one of theirs and say, oh, I can make my version. And like, no one will know because I'm in Sweden or whatever. So you'd make your version, go shoot your stuff, and they wouldn't have any sort of recourse to come after you or anything like that. So the technology patent spreads that way, except for in the United States, which is a whole other conversation because of Thomas Edison. But yeah, they didn't travel as much, but they would send the cameras out, or people would buy the cameras or rent the cameras, and then would go shoot all these movies.
That's really, really cool.
Tobin, did you see the movie Babylon?
I have not.
I think you would hate it, but I want you to watch it because there's like a camera rental thing in that too, where they're just like, we've broken all the cameras we have. We need another camera because it's like insane shooting movies.
Like Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah, but this is like 1920s, and so like people are like literally getting killed on a battlefield because like there's no safety regulations. It's like right before
just like The Room.
Just like The Room. Yeah, lots of people died making The Room. So Joe, if we're gonna play our new game, hey Dom, what's on your road? What other vehicles other than cars are in this film?
Oh, I didn't even pay attention. It's a train.
It's just a train.
Yeah, but I was maybe hoping that there would be like a bicycle in the background or something.
Or a baby carriage or something.
Yeah, but did they? Maybe this is a time when they only had that one big wheeled bicycle, right? Like the front wheeled one.
There's a guy actually at this. The film starts with a guy pulling a cart, like a trolley. It's not a vehicle. It's
like
more
a red flyer wagon.
No, it's like a hand truck or like a
luggage
forklift,
cart,
but a manual. Yeah, it's probably a luggage. So it's not really a vehicle, but like it's a thing with wheels.
It is, yeah. And you could probably ride it if you were a child.
Or if you were Dom could find a way to turn it into a vehicle, right? I mean,
there might be like a car. Like I'm trying to see in the back here. There's like a truck maybe and like a carrot. I mean, those are cars, but like, yeah. I mean, I've watched this like 45 times while we've been recording this. I mean, not watching, but just had it on like looping. But like, there's not. It's the train. The train is the train.
Where do you think that like? You know what? I'm with. Who said it? I forget who you said it. Like Godard or whatever. Like, I'm with him. I want to see inside this fucking train. I want to see what it looked like.
Do either of you? Here's a trivia. We were doing the Lumiere Brothers minute, and if we were doing a trivia question for this, do either of you know what number this train is?
No, absolutely not.
Number 169.
Hey, nice.
So it's just on the front. It's like I can't even pause it in a way that like we get a solid screenshot of it. Did
you translate it? Was it in French?
Yeah, NO in French means number in English. Okay. So we can't watch a trailer for this. What? Okay, here's actually a question. Tobin, what was the first movie trailer? When did that happen?
Boy,
we know.
I don't know. I don't.
Like, how would they mark? Would they just be like, "Come see this thing. It's moving pictures."
Yeah, the first it was just
like
that.
the posters.
Yeah,
right.
Like, yeah, sandwich boards out front. You know, like it's and by the time there were movie theaters, like people just went to the movies. That was the thing you did. It sort of didn't matter. I mean, my dad talks about going to movies and like as a kid and not caring what shows. Like you just go and you watch whatever the movie is that's that week. You know,
it's wild.
Like there weren't choices. There was a screen and there was a movie showing. You know.
The first trailer shown in an American film theater was in November 1913 when Niels Gronlund, the advertising manager for the Marcus Loew theater chain, maybe that's a Lowe's theater chain, possibly?
Yeah.
Produced a short promo film for the musical The Pleasure Seekers, opening at the Winter Garden Theater on Broadway.
Sounds sexy.
So 1913.
So it was a trailer for
a musical, like a live action.
Right. So right. Okay.
He was also the first to introduce trailer material for an upcoming motion picture using slide technique to promote an upcoming film featuring Charlie Chaplin at the Lowe's 7th Avenue Theater in Harlem in 1914. So like since the mid 1910s.
Yeah. That makes sense. There's enough movie theaters.
Way earlier than I expected.
Yeah.
Until the late 1950s, trailers were mostly created by the National Screen Service, consisted of various key scenes from the film being advertised. So nothing's changed, man. They're just like, hey, here's all the best stuff from the movie.
Yeah.
You're going to spoil that. Most trailers had some form of narration, and those that did featured stentorian voices, a practice that would wane in the 2000s.
In a world.
What are those voices?
In a world.
Is it like the movie guy voice? Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. Is it that? Yeah.
And Stentor was the herald of the Greek forces in the Iliad, noted for his loud voice. But yeah, In a World. Which also, the Lake Bell movie, In a World, is really good. So go check that out.
Yeah.
So we can't watch a trailer, because like the trailer for this would be like, you're not going to believe it, but a train arrives at the station.
It's just like 2 clips. It's like 1 second. They're like... You could almost figure out what's going to happen.
You could cut it like a horror movie, probably, right? Where it's just like all black, and there's like a screech, and like the train appears, and then the train disappears.
Flash.
You could do the ones that were like a teaser trailer where there's no image. It's just a black screen with the sound, and like maybe some smoke rolls through, and you're hearing the train pull in, and like coming soon, you know, and like just no images at all. And it could be longer than the movie itself.
You know what I'm also thinking? Remember, like, I don't know how to describe this in a way that doesn't make it sound perverted, but remember there used to be like those bubbles you could put over like someone's picture that's like, ooh, like look at all this, like you like expose skin, like they're wearing clothes or whatever. Like just do that with the train. So it's like there's like a dude's face and like a child and like something. It's just like you're seeing selected sporadic parts of the frame. You're like, I don't know what's going on. It's just like
what am I missing?
Yeah. It's what's not there. So anyway, what we can play, and just good luck to both of you on this, we can play the Letterboxd game. So Tobin, this is a game where we go on Letterboxd and you try to guess some numbers and stuff. It's insane. It's very difficult. Joe is somehow good at this, but if you're bad at this, don't feel bad at all. But just
it's hard. Sometimes I'm really bad at this.
For reference sake, Mad Max Fury Road, one of the most popular films on Letterboxd, has been seen or been logged 1.4 million times. So The Arrival of a Train at La Ciotat from 1897, starring Madeleine Kohler, Marcel Kohler, Mrs. Auguste Lumiere, Jean-Josephine Lumiere, Rose Lumiere, and Suzanne Lumiere. Is this our first Nepo babies?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. They definitely are.
And they're the babies eating the food in the one I described too. Yeah. Oh, sure.
How many people or how many times has The Arrival of a Train been logged on Letterboxd? Joe, you go first.
Yeah. I think due to the fact that we have humans like Tobin on this planet that would show something like this in their film class, but it's very old, but I also think Letterboxd nerds would probably have signed up for Letterboxd based on a film
this
class.
Number, I'm going to be so insanely probably angry, but keep going.
I'm going to guess, and the people that down a little bit, I'm going to go 5,700. 5,700.
Okay, Tobin, how many people do you think how many times has this been logged on Letterboxd?
See, I was going to say 5,000, but now but I don't want to be that close to yours. So I'm going to say
that's okay.
8,000.
You are both too low. Please guess again.
Okay, my first real guess.
Your real guess. What do you mean to guess?
I'm still gonna go like 10,500. 10,500.
Okay, yeah. Tobin?
53,000.
You are both still too low.
That's insane.
Guess.
No way.
Jeez.
Over 53,000. So
this
53,000
number was
people
very
logged.
high. I was surprised.
It's insane. Yeah. 72,000. That's it.
72. Okay.
100,000.
65,875 people have logged The Arrival.
That's way more than I expected.
Wow. Average rating of a 3.7, the most common a 5, then a 3, then a 4. 3 is probably objectively the funniest thing you can give this, because like 5 is like, half a star, you're like, whatever, but like 3 is just like, yeah, that was fine.
It was okay.
Meh.
Out of those 66,000 people, how many have this in their top 4 favorite films of all time? And Tobin, I will give you, I don't know, Joe, if you remember, but like I sent Joe screenshots of 2 different things that we're not using. So the number's at least 3, because we have 2 people who did like joke ones, and then we have at least 1 more that we're actually using. So the number is at least 3. Like I will let you know as you think about the number. The people who like jokingly did Train, then Burt Reynolds in Hooper, Burt Reynolds in Hooper, and they also did Train, Kung Fu Panda. So like we're not doing one of those profiles, but like people are having a laugh with this. But out of those 66,000, Joe, how many people do you think have this in their top 4 favorite films on Letterboxd?
14.
Tobin?
21.
Both too low. One more guess, because you're both like relatively close, but
yeah, it has to be 31.
40.
32. 32 people have this in their top 4 favorite films of all time. So we're going to go to Marco Jackson at Marco4J, who watched this 6 years ago. And I can't tell if this is serious or genuine. I don't know that English is his first language. I think, maybe he's British. I don't know. But he says, if you can see this in its natural setting at the Cinema Museum in Turin, it is utterly fabulous. And I don't know if that's someone like actually being kind of film snobby, or if someone pretending to be film snobby, but I was like, okay, Marco's okay. Yeah. So
Arrival. Did they actually show it on like the old? It would be cool if they had like one of the old camera boxes, and he's like, if you watch it like the way amazing. It was, it'd be really cool. So maybe that's what he's alluding to there.
So Marco has Arrival of a Train as his favorite film of all time.
Okay.
His numbers 2, 3, and 4 are all gettable. I would say 2 and 3 are much bigger. 4 is a thing that, I don't know if this is the original. This might be the original one, but there's a movie from the 60s that has been remade a bunch of different times in a bunch of different ways. Just a comedy. His number 3 is from the 80s and is one of the most popular films of all time. And then his number 2 is from the 2000s and is one that is on many dorm room walls across this country, but not bros. They're on many dorm room walls of developing film nerds. If you want to ask questions, if you want to try to hone in on one, but there's one from the 2000s, one from the 80s, and one from the 60s.
Where do we want to start, Tobin?
Let's start with the 2000s.
Okay.
Can I ask how far, like we're talking early 2000s or like closer?
I want to say 2000s, like 2000 to 2009, but it is in that first decade. Okay. And I'll actually give you a year that's going to really hone in on it. Maybe 2003.
Okay, because when you said dorms, my first thought was Fight Club.
Yes. Yeah.
But
yeah,
you
same.
Said not Bros. So I'm like, okay,
not Bros. Fight Club is always like the first one.
Yeah.
Like not like the Butterfly Effect.
No, that's also Bros. That's like a bro.
Yeah, I know.
Bro, you want a mindfuck, bro?
Not Memento.
No?
2003 though is kind of harder. And not Bros, but Developing Film Nerds. Is it an American movie?
It is an American movie, but it does not take place in America.
Ah, haha. Okay.
Is it an independent movie or a studio movie?
It's an independent movie, but it's not like real like bootstraps. It's
okay.
It's a studio that's near and dear to this network's heart, I will say that.
Interesant.
American movie that does not take place in America. Aspiring film nerds love this.
Do I like this movie?
Let's see if you've logged it on Letterboxd.
That won't really tell you because I just log as I watch. I don't usually go back and log.
Do
you think I like this movie?
I don't think you do. But I think you would be kind about it, maybe. I don't know. I'd be interested. It's one that's it's not really polarizing, but people like this is a movie that this is like people like live or die by this movie. And there's some people just like, yeah, whatever. I think we've probably had this in this game before, Joe.
I'm sure we have.
It's a very popular movie. 849,000 people have logged it. Very popular.
Huge. That's huge for here.
I will also say on one version of the poster, an umbrella is very prominently featured.
An umbrella?
Yeah.
It.
No. Where are the questions on FAQ?
Yeah, okay. We're getting to the bottom of the barrel. We start to read the frequently asked questions. Here we go. Come on. The years don't help me at all, so.
What did one character whisper to another character at the end of the movie?
Oh. It Lost in Translation? Am I just
do you like that movie or no?
Do I? Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, American Zoetrope. So it is an independent. It's not a studio, but it's a Francis Ford Coppola where it's like not really independent, but technically independent. So,
and you're right. Film nerds would love it. I've been to that bar. I've drank at that bar.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about that before in that regard, right? Like it's an American movie that's set in place in Tokyo, whatever.
Yep.
All right. Number 3 is from the 80s, one of the most popular films, one of the most beloved films, a perfect film that we've covered on this podcast.
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future, number 3.
Bang.
Number 4, from the 60s. I actually want to see if this is the first. Is this the first? No. Well, ooh. It's based on a play from 3 years earlier.
Okay.
This is a film that also became a TV series. Had 2 spin-off series, or maybe a spin-off series, a remake, and then another remake. There was a sequel to this film, and then there was a female version of this film. The 1960s.
A sequel, and you said it's been made a bunch of times, and it was a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm gonna have no idea what the 60s comedy is.
I will say the most recent version of
The Odd Couple.
The Odd Couple.
Nicely done.
Wow.
I would say the most recent version of this
of things.
had Thomas Lennon and Matthew Perry in it.
Wow. I don't know how I got there. You connected the wires in my brain.
It's, I guess, the Neil Simon play becomes a movie, becomes a TV series. There's an animated series. There's a remake of the series. There's another remake of the series. There's a sequel to it. There's a female Odd Couple. So
makes sense.
So Marco Jackson's 4 favorite films of all time: The Arrival of a Train at La Ciotat, Lost in Translation, Back to the Future, and The Odd Couple. Which
it's a pretty good lineup.
Not a terrible list, yeah.
Not bad.
Not mine, but not terrible.
No. Tobin, do you have a top 4? What is your top 4 on Letterboxd accurate?
I don't know anymore. I haven't looked. That's a long time since I made that list.
You tell me. Are you still on Letterboxd? You delete your Letterboxd?
No, I'm still there.
Oh, you're TWA.
Yeah.
Teaching with Authority.
Yes.
Your top 4 are your most recent films on here are weird, man.
It's research stuff.
Are you writing a horror movie?
Yeah.
Sweet. Did you like? So you
That's
like
awesome.
the Micah Monroe Significant Other? We're just like, oh, that's not where that movie I thought that was going to go.
Which movie?
Significant Other, where Micah Monroe's in the woods with her fiance or boyfriend. Yeah. You're like, oh, I know what this movie is, and you're like, I don't know.
I don't know what it is. Yeah, they have a lot of fun with where it goes. Yeah.
Your top 4 are Seven Samurai, The Third Man, The Last of the Mohicans, and The Adventures of Robin Hood.
Yeah, I would probably
should have been Men in Tights. Should have been Men in Tights.
I do like Men in
Tights.
Pass. I do like Men in Tights. I'd probably swap one of those out for Fanny and Alexander, the Ingmar Bergman movie.
Okay.
And then Psycho sometimes pops up on that list. But that's
good movie.
But I would stand by those two.
Your only list is the list that you made for Cinemakers.
Right.
You ranked Soderbergh.
That's right.
And you have the correct number 1 and number 2. Out of Sight and Ocean's 11. Well, thank you so much, Tobin, for joining us.
Thank you for the good lesson.
Return to this podcast. Is there anything that people that you want people to know about? I watched your film. I don't know if I told you, but I watched A Christmas Stray. But what have you made that's out there? What are you making that you have anything you could talk about? Anywhere people can find you? Anywhere you want to be found? Anything you want to plug to our listeners who have made it through this 45 or so minutes of arriving at a train at La Ciotat?
No big plugs. Go back and listen to episodes of The Contenders if you haven't, or listen to them again if you have.
Do you have a favorite an entry point if people have not listened to that show?
Oh, good question.
Oh boy. Oh,
I liked the Revenge episode because we made Eisen watch the film Revenge.
That was good. Yep.
But I don't know if that's the best place to start because I don't know if she was necessarily super passionate about that.
I think our Thelma and Louise episode's pretty good. And then our dad is on an episode for Hidden Figures. That's fun.
That was a good one. And I always liked when you had Joe on and you did like a Christmas movie.
Yes. Yeah.
And Island rehashing her former flame, her former crush.
Yes, my roommate Joe. Yes.
Well, cool. So on Friday, bonus episode Fast 10 with Montez. Next week, Life in the Fast Lane. Might have another Fast 10 next week, or we might have a bonus episode. I don't know, either one, either both. I want to give a very special shout out to our patrons, Cassie Wilson, Nick Burris, Alex Ellen, and Justin Kleiman, and Brian Rodriguez of High School Slumber Party. Wes Hampton, Jerry Robinson, Dan the Duke, Hayden Renato DiDonato, Michael McGann, Lane Middleton, Lindsay Lewandowski. You know her, Tobin. Nate Milton of the Kings of Sport, Jason Rainey, Tom Price, Mike Gallier, Josh Buckley of Whole Lotta Wolves, Michael Moser, Christian Larson, and Jessica Collins, a.k.a. Montez. Thank you all for supporting us at the $5 a month level or above. Come back on Friday for the bonus episode next week for the Life in the Fast Lane. Email in if you want us to read on that. We got a bunch of emails to read for that. But if you want to email in again, family@cageclub.me. And for all things Too Fast, Too Forever, go to cageclub.me, facebook.com/TooFast2Forever, or @TooFast2Forever on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Vote in the Too Fast, Too Forever Hall of Fame. You have about a week left to vote at cageclub.me/vote. And check out our store at cageclub.me/shop. And come back on Friday for Fast 10 with Montez. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
I'm Joe too.
And that was Tobin Addington. And we will tell you all about it
when we see you again.